Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. The United States and European Union have reached a trade deal framework aiming a months-long standoff. The agreement includes a 15% US tariff on EU goods, half of the threatened 30% with zero tariff access for certain US exports to Europe. The leaders of Cambodia and Thailand have arrived in Malaysia for ceasefire talks in their border conflict. US and Chinese ambassadors also attended the meeting in Putrajaya. At least 6 people were killed in a shooting in a market in Bangkok, including the gunman who took his own life. Thai police confirmed the incident today. UN aid chief calls for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and not just a pause. This comes as restrictions ease and over 100 truckloads of aid are collected. Trump says Israel will have to make a decision on the situation, while the WHO warns malnutrition has reached alarming levels. China is pushing for mutual respect and reciprocity in trade talks with the United States, with negotiators meeting in Stockholm, Sweden. China hopes to strengthen cooperation and promote stable development of US-China relations. A Russian airstrike on Kyiv wounded 8 people, including a 3-year-old child, after midnight today. 4 of the injured have been hospitalized, with 1 in serious condition. This comes from the Kyiv authorities. US President Donald Trump will host British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at his Scottish golf course resort today for talks, including their recent trade deal and the Gaza hunger crisis. Trump said he expects Starmer will be pleased with the EU trade agreement announced earlier. Police in Ecuador reported that at least 14 civilians were killed in 2 attacks in a coastal area where drug trafficking gangs are fighting for control. The attackers fired at a group near the initial site, killing 2 more people. Now we start this hour with our top story. The United States and the European Union have reached a major new trade agreement with key impacts on autos, energy and agriculture. President Trump agreed a 15% tariff that will hit EU exports, including autos. Reactions from leaders have been coming in. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has slammed the new EU-US trade deal, calling it worse than Britain's agreement. He mocked EU chief Ursula von der Leyen, saying Trump, quote, ate her for breakfast. Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni urged caution. She said the deal is still preliminary and needs more work. Meloni called for greater support at both national and EU levels for sectors that may suffer. Meloni warned that the EU cannot afford to delay reforms that could offset the deal's possible negative impacts. Let's have a look at what the Italian Prime Minister had to say.
La base di dazi al 15%, se ricomprende i dazi precedenti che in media erano intorno al 5%, 4,8%, differentemente da quello che prevedeva un possibile accordo al 10% che sommava i dazi precedenti, secondo me è una base sostenibile, dopodiché ovviamente bisogna andare nei dettagli. Bisognerà lavorare ancora sull'accordo perché quello che è stato sottoscritto ieri è un accordo giuridicamente non vincolante di massima, quindi nei dettagli su alcune cose bisogna ancora andare, quindi c'è ancora, diciamo così, da battersi, e all'esito di questo lavoro bisognerà anche a livello nazionale, a livello europeo, lavorare per aiutare quei settori che dovessero essere particolarmente, diciamo, coinvolti, ecco, da questa decisione.
We're now joined by Andrew KP Lung, who's a China strategist. He joins us live from London to discuss our top story in further detail. Andrew, having a look at this framework for this deal, it says a 15% baseline tariff, 0 for 0 tariffs on strategic sectors, including aircraft components, certain chemicals, generic pharmaceuticals, and also some commitments to investment from the EU into the US. That's $750 billion US in US energy products over several years. Viktor Orban says that Donald Trump ate Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission chief, for breakfast. What are your thoughts on that statement and on this deal?
And it really seems that the European Union has found itself in a dire strait because the Trump tariffs are rocking the global supply and value chain, but also cause almost irreparable damage to the already stretched European Union economies. As jobs are lost and production is halted, and there's a rising tide also of public anger of the kind of struggling economies. Not least, of course, is the continuing war in Ukraine. And then they're fearful that the Americans' military backing is no longer proving to be reliable. So all these factors combined into a kind of hidden panic, if you like, in the European capitals that they want to deal badly. And if you look at the deal itself, it's all for catering for Americans' interests. I mean, a flat tariff of 15%, and also the huge investments of the European Union countries in America. So it seems that Trump is getting a lot of what he wants, and what the European Union gets is only a scaling back some of the verbal tariffs, because tariffs is just, it's a kind of verbal threat, and it costs American nothing, practically, at the beginning. So I think, look at it all, the European Union is struggling to find a deal, and it seems that it just want to deliver this as some kind of pause, in fact, in the Americans' confrontation with the European Union. But that's not going to end well in the long term, because Trump is not going to be relaxed in its American first policy towards any country, in fact, allies included.
Yes, indeed, Andrew. The European Union is a bloc of 27 countries, and also the day after that this deal has been struck, negative reactions are coming in. What's the next move? Obviously, there was a huge scramble for there to be a deal signed on time by Ursula von der Leyen, the EU chief. How do we see opposition from those 27 countries going, and who will it affect in a negative way more than others?
I think there are two dynamics here. First, as you pointed out, there are a few European Union countries who are traditionally more sort of resistant against American pressure, including, for example, Viktor Orban and a few other European countries. But then I think that the two big players, Germany and France, and Italy and Spain, they also want to have at least a temporary pause, if you like, in continuing escalation of confrontation with the United States. I think the next move, of course, is for the European Union to try to seek other avenues for growth and to balance its economy. Not least, of course, is an overture towards China, for instance, and of course other countries in the global south. But while this is going on, it will take time. It's not just that the European countries all want to embrace China because of a lot of deep-seated differences, including ideological and also economic and trade. But on the other hand, we're seeing a recalibration of relationship, the transatlantic relationship, which has lasted for so long since the Second World War, is subject to pressure, subject to challenge. So I think that the European Union leaders are trying to seek a way out trying to stabilize relationship with the United States in the first instance, trying to deal with the war in Ukraine. It's now more united, trying to prop up Ukraine defenses, and in a way causing a recalibration of Trump's strategy towards Russia. But I don't think that will be the end game. So a lot of obstacles along the way. And Ukraine remains a huge challenge to the sense of security, and that also divides a number of European Union members countries.
Yes, Andrew, do stay with us as we talk more tariffs. Moving on, China has said that it is seeking mutual respect and reciprocity in trade talks with the United States, as its negotiators are due to meet with Washington counterparts. This comes after the United States temporarily halted export restrictions on technology to China in a bid to avoid disrupting ongoing trade talks and to support US President Donald Trump's efforts to secure a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping later this year, according to reports. This development comes as Stockholm prepares to host a fresh round of US-China trade talks today, focused on long-standing economic disputes between the world's two largest economies. The US Commerce Department's Industry and Security Bureau, which oversees export controls, has been reportedly advised in recent months to avoid tough moves on China. According to reports, the White House and Commerce Department have not commented on these claims. Andrew, we are joined by you once again. Beijing has said it wants respect and reciprocity in these talks. What leverage does China have going into them?
Well, China has a unique average, which is not, of course, found in European Union countries or any other countries in the world. China's trump card at the moment, which is newly found, is a stranglehold on rare earths, which is really the Achilles heel of the United States, because even though rare earths are found in other countries than China, but China controls as far as the supply is concerned, it's about 60 or 70%. But what is more, China controls the very complicated and polluting processes of the rare earths to the extent of something like over 95%. Because all these processes have been developed over decades by China, as Western countries do not want anything to do with these polluting processes, and also depends on the final rare earth product, which can find itself essential component of anything from mobile phones to laptops to missiles to F-35 fighters. As much as 97% is now controlled by China, and to some products, even 100%. So I don't think that, and it's not easy for that to be replaced entirely, at least by any Western countries. So I think that China's now got the stranglehold over the Trump's coercion. This stranglehold is not found in any other countries, and that's gives the China the confidence to negotiate a better deal compared with the European Union.
Yes, indeed. Do you think we're seeing a tactical softening from both sides, or is this just a pause in an otherwise escalating economic rivalry?
It's not just trade, it's not just rare earths. The two countries have many differences, apart from ideological differences. And because there are for the United States, there's the question of the fentanyl, the question of China seem to be supplying Russia, buying Russian oil, in a way indirectly supporting the war in Ukraine. There's a recent case of an exit ban of some American nationals, apart from the rare earths. The question of TikTok, for example. So all these are likely to be part of the negotiating process. But above it all, there is a mismatch between the American model based on the private sector, the Chinese model, which is a mixed capitalism and also state state capitalism. So I think that this is a big mismatch between the two countries, which needs some sort of mutual understanding for any fruitful outcome to come about.
Yes, Andrew KP Liang, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to get your insight as always. Now we move over to Europe, where according to reports, Ukraine said that Russian attacks have claimed the lives of at least 8 civilians and injured more than 40 others, including children, over the past 24 hours. Russian forces launched 324 Shahed-type attack drones, along with other drones. 4 Kh-101 cruise missiles and 3 Kinzhal aeroballistic missiles overnight, primarily targeting the town of Starkovskia in Kermenshky in the Oblast region, which has an Ukrainian airbase located in it. Although Ukrainian air defences intercepted most of the incoming attacks, some missiles and drones still hit residential and civilian areas. In Kiev, a Russian drone struck an apartment building in the Darnasky district, injuring 8 people, including a 3-year-old. Meanwhile, in the Dnipropetrovsk, 3 civilians, including a minor, were injured in separate attacks. Casualties were also reported in Donetsk, Kherson and Sumy oblasts, with one tragic incident near Yunakivka, where a Russian drone struck a bus, killing 3 and injuring 19 evacuees. We're now joined by Joshua Barnes, who's an anchor and correspondent. He's here to give us more context. What more can you tell us, Josh?
Well, yes, absolutely, Thomas. The situation on the ground is still difficult across a lot of Ukraine. You detailed there a lot of the regions that have seen drone and missile activity in the past 24 hours. This is a theme that has been consistent throughout recent weeks and months of the war. Of course, fighting on the battlefield still ongoing, with thousands of deaths being reported each week in a battle between two nations which doesn't seem to be stopping. Of course, geopolitical efforts and global efforts for peace have persisted. There have been 3 rounds of direct peace talks between Ukraine and Russia in recent months. That was the first time in over 3 years that the two countries had sent delegations to sit down and speak about this conflict that is having impacts on both sides of the border. Of course, efforts towards a peace deal are there. The US have been a key part in discussions, as have Western European nations, mostly in support for Ukraine, but the status quo is remaining. It is, of course, a conversation that we have almost daily here on NewsX World about strikes being reported from both sides. It's not just Russia that are striking Ukraine in this conflict. Ukraine are also striking the other way too, with civilian casualties reported by either country at what seems to be a regular rate. The situation is a concerning one, of course. People living in Ukraine, in the capital Kyiv, as well as regions in the east and the west, spending nights in shelters. It has become the norm for many living in Ukraine to be hearing sirens through the night and making their way into shelters, makeshift shelters, underground facilities as well. It is an extremely tough time. The humanitarian aspect, of course, is something that does need to be looked at, but diplomacy is the key route forward here. Questions have been raised by Western leaders as to whether Russia wants peace. We know, and we've had reports from Russia themselves, that they continue to make ground on the battlefield. Some experts we've had on the programme say that there's no incentive for Vladimir Putin to end this war while his country and his army is advancing. The status quo remains, civilian casualties and civilian deaths being reported weekly. A disturbing situation for those living inside of the country, but diplomacy will need to prevail if that is to stop. Currently, no progress has been made towards a proper ceasefire.
Joshua, thank you very much for that context. And we will bring you all the updates for that ongoing war in Europe whenever we get them here on NewsX World. But now over to West Asia, where Israel has reported that over 120 truckloads of food aid were distributed to the Gaza Strip on the first day of a limited pause in military operations. The pause, declared by Israel on Sunday, allows for secure routes to be opened for humanitarian assistance. According to SOGAT, the Israeli Defense Ministry body overseeing civilian affairs, An additional 180 trucks are waiting to be distributed, with hundreds more queued up for UN pickup. In addition to the truck deliveries, Israel, Jordan and the UAE have conducted parachute airdrops of smaller aid quantities. With over 2 million Palestinians living in Gaza, the aid is vital, as recent weeks have seen warnings of famine due to dwindling supplies. Despite international pressure for a ceasefire, Israel continues to deny using hunger as a weapon, instead accusing aid agencies of failing to distribute the aid effectively. We're now joined by Emeritus Menachem Klein, who is a professor at the Bar Ilan University. He joins us live from Israel. Thank you very much, Professor Klein, for joining us on the program. What is your response to Israel saying that these agencies, the United Nations, Amnesty International, etc., have not been effectively delivering this aid to get into the hands of those who need it in the Gaza Strip the most?
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure.
Unfortunately, the Israeli claim is sheer propaganda, trying to justify its own policy of denying any authority given to very experienced international agencies to help the poor people of Gaza, starving people of Gaza, and their starvation was made by Israel in purpose, part of its war tactics. So I don't buy this Israeli argument. On the contrary, I do think that these agencies are much more experienced than the fake agency that Israel established under a cover of a Gaza Strip humanitarian agency in order to take control over food supply to the poor Gaza people. The international agencies are much more experienced, and they should have the authority to deliver the food and help the people of Gaza.
Professor Klein, how is Israel reacting to this? Obviously, this new news that Israel will now allow aid drops into Gaza, but also the international pressure that has seemingly forced Israel to this point. What is the public sentiment around it?
First, the international pressure has some success, is successful to a certain limit. It's not, the international pressure did not achieve full opening of Gaza border to international supply entering to Gaza. But it has a limited impact on Israel to deliver food to the people of Gaza. This one. Second, it delays the Israeli war plan, the next stage of war plan. Israeli government instructed its delegation in Doha, negotiating with Hamas on the ceasefire and end of war agreement. The Israeli government instructed its delegation to come back to Tel Aviv. And then the Israeli government started planning the next stage in coordination with the United States, the next stage in fighting Gaza Strip, resuming the offensive, the Israeli offensive in Gaza. It seems that it is in a pause. There is a break now in order to enter into food and aid to the people of Gaza due to the international pressure. However, the very fact that the far right, the Jewish supremacy government coalition members, they are still in the government, shows that Netanyahu promised them to resume the war sometime in the near future. The very fact they did not leave the government, although they rejected, in the past, they rejected any supply entering to Gaza. and they said the Gaza people should be left to starvation and die, or those who refuse to leave and leave Gaza Strip to a third country. So the very fact that they accepted this entrance, this limited help and delivery of food delivery, shows that the option of resuming the war and operating by force, boots on the ground, is still valid. And so I won't be surprised seeing the next stage in the war, an Israeli offensive over southern Gaza, and many more innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians, dying in this offensive. I do not expect that this operation will the Israeli forces will get the hostages and find them live and bring them back to Israel.
Professor Emeritus Menachem Klein, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to speak to you. We now move over to Southeast Asia for our next update. The leaders of Cambodia and Thailand have arrived at Malaysia's Seri Pandana complex, the official residence of Prime Minister Anwar, for talks aimed at securing a ceasefire in their fierce border conflict. Both the United States and China ambassadors to Malaysia were also present at the meeting in Malaysia's administrative capital of Putrajaya, according to reports. This comes after Thailand and Cambodia had accused each other of starting the conflict last week and then escalating the clashes with heavy artillery bombardment at multiple locations along their 817-kilometre land border. It is reportedly the deadliest conflict in more than a decade between the Southeast Asian neighbours. Now, in a related development, a gunman opened fire at a fresh food market in the Thai capital of Bangkok, killing at least 4 security guards and injuring 1 person. The shooting took place today at Tok Core Market near the popular Chatuchak tourist area. Police say the suspect later took his own life. Authorities are now investigating his motive and are working to confirm his identity. Mass shootings are not rare in Thailand, where gun control laws are weakly enforced, making firearms relatively easy to access. Police have launched a full-scale investigation. Now we're joined by our anchor and correspondent, Asuma Kotoka. She's going to tell us what we know so far about this developing situation.
I'll tell you what happened. So far, Thailand's local police has confirmed that there were 6 people who were killed in this mass shooting. But something to note down is that this was not a random shooting. They all knew each other. This shooter who shot these 5 other people, they used to all be colleagues. So we don't know exactly what the bad blood was there, but we definitely know that this is not a random shooting. They all knew each other. So this guy who shot these people, 4 of them were his previous colleagues. This guy used to be a security guard at this market called Toko Market. And then this lady who got shot as well was their boss. So they used to work together. He went back, killed his 4 colleagues, and then shot his boss as well. So this is not a random attack. And also something to note down that Thailand, compared to other parts in Asia, has quite a high gun ownership rate if you compare it to other parts of Asia, like Japan or South Korea or Vietnam. Thailand, comparatively, although it has high gun ownership, you won't hear this kind of news often. The last time, which is still fresh in our minds, is when a 14-year-old opened fire in Thailand 2 years ago, which was in 2023, and he shot down 2 people and injured several others. That is still fresh in our minds, but yes, in Thailand this is not a very common occurrence, although they have a high gun ownership rate compared to other countries in Asia. And also the 6 people who were killed it includes the gunman himself. From what we know, this happened earlier today in the morning, and it happened in the Ortoko market, which has produce including seafood, and it's quite well known in the capital as somewhere where you get your good vegetables, fresh vegetables, as well as produce.
Asuma, thank you very much for giving us that context. We will bring you all the updates on that developing situation as we get it. But we now finish the bulletin with some stories from the world of business. Tesla has signed a $16.5 billion chip deal with Samsung Electronics. Elon Musk confirmed that Samsung's new Texas plant will produce Tesla's next-gen AI6 chips. The partnership is expected to boost Samsung's struggling chip manufacturing business. Soon after the news was released, Samsung shares soared up over 4%. CK Hutchinson says it's in talks to add a Chinese strategic investor to add a $22.8 billion ports deal following Beijing's scrutiny amid Sino-US tensions. The company's exclusive talks with a BlackRock-led consortium, including MSC, have ended, but discussions continue. Boeing workers in St. Louis have overwhelmingly rejected a contract offer pushing the company towards a possible strike. The offer included a 20% wage hike over 4 years, a $5,000 ratification bonus, more vacation and sick leave. And union members, however, have said it doesn't meet their needs. Heineken have reported a 7.4% rise in half-year organic operating profit, beating analyst expectations. However, sales in Europe fell due to ongoing tough price negotiations with retailers. Despite headwinds, a late Easter and good weather helped offset losses. The brewer also faces growing tariff risks in several markets. The Trump administration will reveal findings of a national security probe into semiconductor imports in 2 weeks, according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. This comes as President Trump signals potential tariff hikes. Lutnick said the investigation prompted the EU to pursue a broader trade deal to address multiple issues in one sweep. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.